Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind.
Hello, welcome to episode 22 of The Rewind. If you enjoy conversation about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms, you've definitely come to the right place. So on the show, we'll recap what was a pretty interesting week in official news and changes when it comes to Pantheon. So we're going to check out some community conversations like we always do, and of course, let you know what's going on in our little corner of the Pantheon world. But before we get to all that, we do have to check in with my amazing co-host, Minus. So how are you doing and what's new with you, man? Minus, hey, what's up, man? Are you there?
No more class videos, Joppa. No more class videos, please.
Dude, it's not Joppa. It's me, Theric.
Oh, geez. Sorry about that, man. I must have dozed off. And I'm sweaty. Why am I so sweaty? I must have been having a nightmare or something.
Sure you're up for this show, man?
Yeah. We're good. Let's do this. This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. All right, so we start all the time in VR in social media, and Kilson actually started off social media by giving more life to the topic that Joppa had started the week before in discussing like what elements are critical for the new player experience. And that was a topic, Theric, that we discussed at length last week. Yeah. So we're not going to go back into that and be repetitive in back-to-back weeks like that. So if you want to join in on the conversation deeper, they did link a forum post where more conversations being had about it. And you can check out last week's episode of The Rewind where we really digged into the community feedback on that. So yeah. Now, the reason for the skit at the beginning there is the new website launched on August 30th. Something, Theric, I mean, how long's it been since that website's been updated? Like, what, 2018, all the class pages were put in and it hasn't really been touched since?
I think that's right. Yeah, that was the last major update, I think. So it's a long time coming.
Yeah, and people were really clamoring for this, and you knew that even when they put it together, there was still going to be a lot of complaints. But people were clamoring. It is up, right? So what I want to do is just kind of go through some bullet points about this. Some stuff like if you haven't been following Pantheon super close, or you just kind of check in on videos and stuff like that, and the website wasn't something you've gone to very much. So this VR News and Notes is going to highlight this launch of the new website that debuted last Sunday in reverse of how we typically do it. So I wanted to take some time to highlight some things here with you. And then what we'll do is it's part of the Twitter post as well. So I figured me and you can go through, talk about some things about it. Then we'll look at the community reaction after, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. So first, it's important to note that the full website launch is actually being planned in phases. So if you see something that's missing, like Theric, like lore, for example.
What happened to the lore? Where did it go?
Just know it is coming. They've already openly said like it's coming in a different phase. You'll see the lore coming onto the site. So for those of you that may be turned off by some of this phase approach, considering how long it took like VR to remake the website or update it in general, don't worry. The new website is much easier for them to update, and VR has already shown this by already doing some changes and bug fixes pretty quickly that have been brought up in feedback. So don't worry about, it took them this long to make the page. How long are these phases going to be? I think it'll be a lot quicker than most of us are thinking or maybe worried about.
That was one of the reasons they wanted to do a new website, was because the old one, they said, was super hard to update. Just the way that it was created initially, it was very difficult to put new things on and to change things around. So I think, with this new site, they've got the ability to make pretty quick changes.
Yeah. So the class pages is where my focus has been personally, ridiculously. We've been doing pretty extensive research and on like kind of trying to look at these class pages. And I think that it's probably one of the most misunderstood parts of the site. And in our videos, we're like really trying to explain that these are not finalized lists. The biggest takeaway I've personally had is looking at how the abilities we do see have been reworked. So the reason we really focus on highlighting what is missing here is so that we could go back easily and sort of look at these details as new abilities are released. Like if something new is added to the site, is it new? Is it a change from an old ability? And obviously without these videos or the pieces of content we have, we wouldn't really have a point of reference, right? Because it's gone. The old website's gone. There's no going back to the old website. So this gives us sort of a point of reference when we're doing these digs and showing what was removed. It's not to say these things are gone forever. So that's important.
Yeah. It's really interesting to compare just as a general overall, is because, some of that information, we have screenshots, we have pictures or whatever. And when you go through and you compare, I mean, that's what's really interesting about this, is because you see like the evolution of it, right?
Yeah. And it's, this game's in pre-alpha, so a lot's being built, right? Like that's the one thing everybody has to understand is there's still building to be done. That's why it's in pre-alpha. If there wasn't still building and there still wasn't tuning and there wasn't changes, we'd be in alpha or we'd be in beta. We're exactly where we should be in pre-alpha and doing what we should be doing in pre-alpha, right? So it's important. There's like 4 points I just want to make about these videos and about this part of the website. First, the overall point of the website is so someone can discover Pantheon. You need to look at it through that lens, right, Theric? Like if we meet a friend and we're like, you got to check this game out, sending them to the old website was strange because it was so out of date. Like you couldn't have a conversation with them that was current. So it's important that like people like us or like the hardcore fans that really follow this game a lot, like, yes, there's a lot for us to digest, but we're going to do that. Then we're going to move forward. This is really for the new discoverer. And I think it's important that we look at these class pages or the overall site as sort of that discovery piece. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I do. A lot of the things on the old page was that they were outdated. Like you'd see screenshots from 2017, and they weren't, some of the stuff that was the most current stuff. And it gives the wrong impression. If somebody goes to the site and they don't look to, you had to go to the news, basically to the news section to see, maybe the most current thing. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't go there, you looked in other places, you'd think, wow, the game's not, they must have stopped production. Maybe they're not developing anymore. Maybe it's just sort of faded away. So it's really important to have a page that shows you're active, you're vibrant, you're still in development. So I think that is accomplished here.
Yeah. The second point that's really important, and I'm repeating this a lot, but this is so important. Class pages are being cleaned up a lot, right? So they're getting rid of a lot of needless verbiage. There are spells that were or abilities that were so long and wordy for no reason. And it's so wordy, sometimes it even makes sense. So a lot of the changes are cleanup, and they're also trying to paint a strong picture of like what the class's main role is. On the old site, like every class was listed as utility. So if every class is listed as utility, why are they listed as utility at all? Right? Yeah,
right. Exactly. One of the things I think I noticed in reading the old descriptions of the skills and stuff like that, you can tell that whoever it was, whether it's Brad or whoever it was that came up with them, they were very theoretical in their design. Like some of them, you read them, and I think it's pretty clear and pretty safe to say they weren't ever really considered in terms of a practical way. Like, can we actually program this kind of way? They were very high, pie in the sky, very high ideas. And I think that they definitely had to be refined. I mean, from this perspective, I see these changes definitely as like a refinement of the original ideas for a lot of these abilities into a much more realistic form.
Yeah. Yeah. And the big thing is if a new discoverer is coming to the website and they want to know who the tanks are, the less cloudy that is, the better, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
And the big thing too is, one of the tenets of the game is that the classes are unique, right? So, they have defined roles. So cleaning that up, in my opinion, really aligns with what this game should be. And I think it paints a better picture for people. My personal opinion on that. So I think,
I would agree too.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a second. It's not perfect, but that's what they're trying to do. And I'm going to say this for the 400th time, and I'll probably say it again. The spell lists are not complete. Just because we made a video that said this was removed, it was removed from the site. It's not removed from the game. And I tried to be very clear and say that 100 times in every video, but there's still people who are kind of confused in that. And I get it, but don't worry. They're not complete lists. At the bottom of each spell list, you're going to see it just says, not a full list.
Yeah. I am curious about what the criteria was for them to pick those as sort of the featured abilities. I think that there's some interesting choices there.
Yeah, and we'll get into that here in a minute. I'm actually curious to hear your points on that. And the last point is these are evolving, right? Like as they release more about classes, you're going to see these expand. You're going to see spells release. It's kind of because they can update the site easier now. You're going to see this evolution and excitement, and we might even have like a content release where on this day we're going to reveal this on the paladin or whatever, and that's kind of cool. It's fun moments again about class reveals, which is a big draw for new people discovering the game, or even us veterans like getting excited. So that's it's going to evolve. Remember that. That's important. So now, with that said, because I've spent, I don't even know how many hours, a minimum of 3 hours per video. We've done 10 videos. So let's say 30 to 60 hours I've spent digging through these pages this week alone.
Yeah, you weren't busy. You got nothing else to do, right?
Jeez. Yeah. So like, if the goal is to refine and paint a proper picture for the roles of each class, this is not equal across the board right now. And I'm not trying to be super critical. I'm really not, because it's a couple complaints out of a very well done overall. So it's close. Like the classes are close, but there's a couple standouts for me. First, I think the Paladin is like the featured abilities they picked for Paladin are so heavy on healing, and it's listed as tanking. And I feel like the physical side of it and the tanking side of it is really lacking from the spell description. Now, I'm not being very critical. This is a very slight complaint. Don't overread this, but I would have liked to see more tank focus on that page. I think the saving grace for that, and why I say it's such a slight issue, is because I think that most people who've ever played a fantasy game will understand that when they see the word tank and paladin, sort of what the class is going to be like anyway. And so like, I'm not extremely critical on the paladin page because of that. It's just a slight complaint. I would like to see more, tank than healing. Am I crazy there? Like, what do you think?
No. I agree with you too. I look more closely at some of the other classes, obviously, and I can say, like, when you're listed as a damage class, you really want to have those abilities featured. And I think that there are a couple classes where that is their role, but the damage abilities aren't necessarily like some of the best ones, or maybe some of the defining ones aren't listed. And I have to bring it up, but I have to, say, Rangers, like tracking's not listed anymore. And I find that very strange. It's in EQ, it was part of the Ranger, set that made them very fun to play for me. And so I'm personally sort of hoping that's just one of those things that just didn't make the cut for whatever reason. It's like an Enchanter's got the change with, Mesmerize became known as Fascinate, but imagine if that wasn't on there, it'd be kind of strange, right? So
yeah. Well, that's like Enchanters don't have Charm, right? I mean, we know Charm's going to be in because Jeff has talked about it. So for like Enchanter fans, like if you're upset and you're like, where's Charm? It's been said on live stream how that's going to work. So Charm's in, just because it's not on that site. And that's another whole point of like, if it's not on the site, doesn't mean it's not there. It's just not revealed completely. Maybe it's not properly named, or there's a slight little thing they want to change about it that could play into it, or maybe they just want to reveal it later. Now,
I mean, leaving things to be excited about is part of their MO. They know not revealing too much is one of their strategies, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. Just one of those little things you notice.
Yeah, and I would guess tracking is going to be there, because if not, I don't know how you're going to play. So so there's one thing I do want to say. So a slight little issue with the Paladin page. I'm really critical of the Druid page, and it actually caught some people off guard because you know me, I'm not going to try to be critical, but if it's important and I think it's something that's going to help the community, then I'll be critical. And so I'm just so confused by the Druid page. And there's probably people out there that are like, oh, Minus is complaining about the Druid because he hates the class. Okay, listen, true. I don't like the class. It has nothing to do with my complaint. If anything, I want to see it properly represented. So here's, as far as we knew it, the Druid is a healing class, which is heavily reliant on Herode, which is their spirit follower. That's everything we know. The player will have to manage Herode's positioning, focus, abilities, while providing healing and utility to the group, and healing through Herode's. It's like, it is the whole essence of playing a Druid, right? So here's the big problem I have with the page. The picture of the Druid has Herode on its shoulder. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's people like, maybe they took it out. There's a picture of him. Like, they didn't take it out. And then the other part of it is there's two abilities that are the Herode abilities from previously. So they say Herode whatever, right? So it's there. Herode is definitely there. There's a lot of people saying, well, maybe they took it out. No, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stand. I really believe Herode is still there. So a new player who comes in and looks at the Druid who hasn't been here. And again, I've talked to a ton of people, and sometimes this is difficult for some of our hardcore community people, like people who've been following Pantheon forever. They don't want to look at it through any perspective but their own. And that's fine. It's not a knock on them. But when you step out and you say, for the new player, when they come look at a druid, they have no idea that the druid is a pet healing class. None.
It's tricky. And Herode as a part of the lore is pretty essential to the halfling race. When I first saw that, when I saw your video and the comments you said on there and the ones you just said now, I kind of thought maybe they decided that it was too connected to the halfling race because that's what Herode is. It's a projection of one of their wards, which is basically their pantheon of deities. So I thought maybe that's what they were doing. But then again, like you said, the picture is still there and it is mentioned in a couple places. It's not explained, And
literally, I'm not saying redo the whole page. In the top where it describes the druid, the little short paragraphs, just put a 3-line couple sentences about Herode and you're done. And everything works. It's a super easy fix, but I think it's really important because a pet healing class is not a common thing. They have it in Final Fantasy 14. It's in a couple other games, but I just think number one, there's a lot of pet fans out there. I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of pet fans out there. So number one, that's going to be a major draw to people who are into pet classes like that. And then again, this is not going to play like a druid from EQ. So it reads a little more like a druid from EQ than this newer reimagined druid from Pantheon. So I just think it's an important thing to do to make that fix. And that's really it. I'm really positive about most of the other class pages almost in their entirety. There's a couple little things here and there, but Rogue, I'm thrilled with. I thought Rogue was great. I think Warrior looks great. Again, most of them look phenomenal. And that one just stands out. That's the only one.
And the community feedback that I've seen has been pretty positive. I haven't seen anybody say this ruins my class that I really wanted to play. I haven't seen any of that. So,
and anybody who does say that, Eric, and you guys are all entitled to your opinion. I would never tell you anything, but I think you're saying, oh no, my abilities have been removed, or they are again, they've not been removed. They're not nerfed. They're not removed. They're just not revealed yet. So,
yeah, I know. And you seriously, you got to understand, like you said, it's a developmental process. It's an evolution, and it's where the game is at in development. So is the website, right? So, before we move on, I have one more small complaint. The FAQ was there when they redid the website. It was up, and then they removed it because I think some old information sort of got through. I think Basgrim pointed it out. There was some old information and then it came back. So I was very happy to see that. But both times when I went through it, in the old FAQ, there was mention right up front. And I think this is something new players look for when they come to the site, is they're looking at the revenue model, right? They want to know, is this a subscription-based game? Is this free to play? Is what's going on here? That's not in the FAQ. I think that's really, really important that that's in the FAQ. And it's not there right now. So hopefully it's just an oversight, and I'm, I don't want to read too much into it. I don't want to open any kind of can of worms or anything like that, but I'm just sort of put that back in there because that's what
the last thing we want. Yeah. The last thing we want is people to think all of a sudden this game is going to go free to play. It's no. And guys, and that's please, it's exactly. It is not, there's nothing that makes me believe it's going to be. The last thing I need is on Twitter. Oh, Minus said Pantheon's going free to play. It's not going free to play. It just put it in there so we feel better. And so people who don't know that.
Right. Exactly. It's one of the things people look for. That's all I'm saying. And it just needs to be there.
So one of the things, this was a great point. Someone else brought this up. I'm not taking credit for it, but some of the people are pretty upset that you can't see newsletters. I think it's prior to April 2020.
Yeah, there's only 4 of them on there.
Yeah. So I think personally, my feeling is this is going to be fixed. Now I can't confirm that 100%, but and this was a point made. It's a perfect point. It would be really sad if they just wanted to have current newsletters that aligned with the current flow, because the thing that they'll lose in doing that is some of the great theory and excitement from Brad that kind of made this all happen. And I think having that there is, it's just good feels. I don't know.
No, I 100% agree with you. And the other thing, there's a lot of stuff in those newsletters that are the lore's going to get transferred into the new site, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's probably not. Remember the community spotlights they used to do, right? On the community members, those I doubt will get a transfer to the new page. I'd love to have those old newsletters, and you look back and you just see the development of the game. There's newsletters that go back to 2015, right? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, like the one talking about like the weapon design. Like, we probably won't see that if that's not put in there, right?
Yeah. I really hope that those find a way. At least some of the content from them finds a way onto the news site, and I'm sure some of it will. But I'm a little skeptical all of it will. But it was I saw that point too. Somebody brought it up. I think it was on Reddit, and it's a really good point too.
It's a really good point. So, Theric, anything else that you wanted to bring up about the website before we jump into what the community's saying about it?
No, I'm just going to end it on a positive note. It's definitely, visually much more appealing. That cycling video right when you first get to the page is awesome.
Yeah,
it looks so nice, and that video is nice and clean and crisp. And the messaging about the game's core concepts, they talked about climbing, perception, climates, that kind of thing is right up front. So good on them. Really well done.
Cool. So let's get into the community. We're going to start with Militus, who, so basically the topic that was put out there, I'll read it exactly from Kilson, was, Pantheon.MMO.com got a fresh coat of paint. Tell us what you think and what you'd like to see in the future, right? So Militus said, beautiful site, but the class changes have me nervous. #Druid, which is hilarious because I did not talk to him before getting any of my thoughts together. So it was interesting that we shared that. Deuterino, which I love, says it does specify that not all abilities are listed. And personally, I prefer that they're not, that not all were mentioned so that there's some mystery to those who want to discover abilities through gameplay. It lists just enough to get an idea of how class plays. So he's right on point with where we kind of were.
Yeah. It was kind of the same thing we said. That's a great point.
Yeah. Zergjerk said really good. He likes it. What he would like to see at some point were some basic like weapon attack animations or like more weapon information. And of course, it mentioned spears. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And that goes back to the newsletters, right? There were those previous newsletters that showed they had those demonstrations of animations and things like work in progress stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Nefel said, overall, it looks good and it is a definite improvement. Focus now needs to be on filling it out with more accurate and updated information, though. So he likes it, but let's fill it up, which I think we both kind of said.
Agreed.
I love this guy's name, Angry Bendy Straw.
I like his point. He's got a really good one here.
Yeah. Add back the lore. No, really. I don't want to have to read it on a wiki.
Yeah. The wiki thing, now that just because he mentioned it, because they had a lot of links to the Pantheon wiki page, and a lot of that information is not current. So, a little, maybe not the best way to go about it, but I think that was maybe the first iteration. They've since corrected that a little bit. There's still a couple links here and there, I think.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. I'm just not on board with the wiki culture at all. I don't like wikis.
It's not like it's not reliable information, because anybody can change it, right? Like it's just not.
I'm gonna go in there and add about how elves are removed and see if I can get it to stick. Maybe that'll be my new mission.
You're gonna cause trouble to undermine the wiki.
I'm just kidding. I won't do that. VR, don't hate me. Sylvia DeBarber says the website looks great. Seems to be easier to navigate, and I love the video on the main screen. Gorgeous. So he's right on board with you there. Great job, VR. I'm always impressed with all the new updates, and I can't wait for the shakeout so I can see the progress has been made. So thanks again. So that's exciting. Alicera just says very simply, I'm liking it. So that's a good one. Bobo says, so far so good. Real good looking. Can't wait for the rest. Took me hours of just ooh and ah all over the place. Thank you, Visionary Realms. So that's fun.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So this guy could be right up there with my Furious Pierre if he used his @tag as his main name. So right now he's Earth is on fire, but his @tag is cold applesauce.
That's way better.
It's so much better.
You gotta be cold applesauce, man.
Yeah. Who cares about the Earth being on fire? You are cold applesauce. He says, looks good. However, some of the responsiveness on my phone, Pixel 2, he's using a Pixel 2. I love pixels. This guy's, I'm telling you, he's the future.
I don't know. I don't like him as much anymore. I'm an iPhone guy. Sorry.
Oh, Theric. I may have to find a new podcast partner. Doesn't look as good though. He says the responsiveness on the phone, race choices on the class page is messed up a little bit on the phone. So keep providing feedback, guys. Like as long as you do it respectfully, like you're going to help make this page better. And that's a great one. So.
Well, I can tell you, it looks pretty good on an iPhone.
Oh, stop. Chobin Hood says, I'm loving it. You seem to have an issue with some of the menu bar when you scroll down. However, someone in the Pantheon.Plus Discord says it appears to be a resolution issue. That was not, I didn't read that last part. That's kind of cool that it was in our Discord.
I didn't notice that.
I honestly swear I didn't plan that. This next one is awesome. And I actually commented after this because I was like, thank you. This is a great bring up. So Moonsty says the team did a great job overhauling the site, but the absolute hands down best part of the new site is this. And they linked the team page. So if you scroll to the bottom of the website, there's a link now for team. And this is the most definitive listing of people who are currently working on Pantheon and who have worked on Pantheon in the past that we have probably ever seen in one place. It's always been kind of cryptic, like who's there, who's not, who's working on it, what do they have? It's been really weird. This is a full look at the Pantheon team. No hidden stuff. Even Sacred's listed on there, who just got announced as being part of VR again. So congrats again, Sacred. So it is that is the full team working on Pantheon. And it even highlights some of the older members who contributed in the past, which is really cool. And of course, right at the top there, we got the shout out to Brad, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the first thing I saw, of course. It's right at the top and where it should be, right? You know, that the contribution, the founder of this, game and the idea behind this game came from Brad. So I love that they gave him his place. They don't have to do this either. Like they don't have to show all the employees, right? And the past contributors, like they're not under any sort of requirement to do this. And people always say, it's a small team, but I think that leads to a lot of sometimes problematic speculation in the community. They say, oh, there's only like 5 people on the team, they're not going to get this done until 2030. But it's like, look at this team. Like this is a, for an indie studio, small-ish team, it's a decent amount of people. Like, so
yeah,
very cool.
IP Dre says, just curious, what is an available weapon edged? Seems to be missing some of the descriptor for this weapon under the Dire Lord. If not, then it's not naturally intuitive. Website, however, looks like a fresh coat of polish. Good job. Edged, Edged was in the old website too. And it was like swords and edged. And I'm like, what was that? Wait, swords not edged? Like,
yeah, I wonder what that means.
This has been a huge debate. Like when I was talking to someone a long time about this, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but is it like scythes? Is it like things like that? Like one-sided bladed weapons? It's not an axe. An axe is listed as an axe. It's an interesting thing, this edged. And I actually even Google searched edged weapons to try to figure it out, but I was getting like axes and swords. I would love to see some clarity, because I have no clue. IP Dre, I wish I could help you. I have no clue.
Yeah, well, we'll put it on the list.
Yeah. Dr. Sinister said, so sick. I love the new look. The homepage background video is awesome. So again, someone else who loves that. The new page is more specific weapon types, gets him excited. It's gorgeous. Adam says the ability section of the class page needs some work. Lots of abilities were removed. The presentation he feels is worse. Important details gone. For example, like passives and such. Class info is a great way to get people interested. So fixing up that aspect would be great. Good feedback. I don't think he was mean or rude, and he has a positive intent. And that's kind of what I was saying with the Druid. Like, we just want to make sure when people, we all want more people to discover Pantheon, and we want to make that as smooth as possible, right? Like that's the end of the day. Let's get pledges in. Let's get them.
Yeah. He's 100% right. I mean, class info is what people identify with, right? Everybody's got an idea about their class, and it's like your videos, that's why they've been so popular, right? So quickly, because everybody wants to know about their class. So he's right.
All right. So, Ewanine, how would you say that? Anwine. I told myself I wouldn't put names I can't say, and I still keep doing it to myself. We'll end with their comment here. It says, looking good, guys. Much more streamlined, certainly up to date, and can't wait for the new forums next. So they started cleaning the forums up, but it looks,
the forums look different. They're not different functionally. They do look different though. So,
I think we're going to have an overhaul with the complete forums like in the future, but I'm not sure. I don't want to misquote that. So
we'll see.
So let's go here. So the last thing I really want to do here, Theric, is I really, really want to give extremely, extremely high praise to Ronik. He made this all happen, and it's out there. It's no secret. Please make no mistake. Ronik is not like a professional web designer at all. He just wanted to take on this challenge. He had done some work on his own site. And he just wanted to help the team get here. Right. And he's talked about it quite openly, like that he's worked with the team. The old website was a really big mess of systems and coding. And it was, we talked about before, it was extremely difficult to upgrade or edit. The new site's not. And that's a big thing moving forward. We're going to see content updates more often, and we're going to see it as a growing resource where the last page was just kind of stagnant. So Ronik's often the brunt of a lot of jokes, but honestly, like hats off, extremely well done job by him managing the entirety of the project. And, all the members of the team, there were a lot of members of the team that kind of stepped outside their comfort zone to make this happen. Because remember, this wasn't designed by a web designer. This was designed by programmers and different stuff. And that is very different, trust me. So great job, Ronik. Great job to everyone who went outside their comfort zones to make this happen for the community. So anything else, Derek, before we move on?
I couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. But cheers, Ronik. Good job.
Awesome. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into social media and see what the discussion is all about.
Okay, so it wouldn't feel right on a week when we got a fresh website to not start there with our community discussions. So let's do that over at Pantheon.MMO.com. The forums, they were abuzz, obviously, as you might expect, with some of the changes. And there was one that really caught my eye, and it was about the armor restrictions and the way armor is now described on the new site for the classes. So Bam Bam started a thread called Armor Types and Restrictions. And I picked this one because it was really highlighted in your class changes videos, minus in terms of redefining the types of armor each class can use. And it was actually a little confusing. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm still a little confused because the way it's listed. So now it's listed on the site as much more defined than it used to be. So, for example, like the Ranger used to say cloth, leather, and light mail, I think. Now it just says light chain. So the question is, is that the top tier of the armor class they can use, or is it the only type they can use? And this thread that Bam Bam started was a lot of discussion about that. So some people are pretty convinced one way, or some people are not so sure. So I think the community is sort of wondering, some of these same things. And after poking around, I think the consensus is that it's the highest tier. And I reached out to you, Minus. I was like, how sure are you about this? I'm like, do you think this is the only type that can use? And you said, no, I'm pretty sure it's the highest tier. So we'll sort of go through these responses and sort of get a sense of how people are looking at this, and the discussion sort of using that framework. So keep that in mind. So here's Bam Bam's question. He says, what's the idea behind the new categorization of armor types? Instead of cloth, leather, mail, and plate, we now have cloth, light leather, light chain, heavy chain, light plate, and heavy plate. In my opinion, it only creates letdowns when an item finally drops and it's the wrong type for the class. Let attributes and stats of an item decide what's good for a class and loosen up the restrictions on the armor types. It minimizes player choice, and it also creates a lot more work for the team to design looks and create these types of armors. So what does the community think? And here's some of the responses that we saw. First up was Bob Winner. He said, I like the idea of anyone can wear anything with consequences that make sense, like a bonus and a penalty depending on your class armor combination. So the further away you get from your natural armor type, the greater the penalty gets. Rokuzachi said, if anyone remembers Ultima Online's armor system, early on you had the plague known as plate mages, wizards in full plate blasting away with spells. Later on, a penalty system was introduced that made it less attractive, but it was still possible to be a plate-wearing mage. Very different game, of course, but if you let everyone use everything, then you need to have lots of checks and balances in place. Our buddy Disposalist said, I like that there are many armor types. It makes sense. What doesn't make sense, though, is if the distinction of the subtypes is being made presumably because the differences are somehow meaningful. How come classes can wear a certain type and anything else is considered below them? I'm really not sure of that. Just because a class is trained to fight in heavy plate, they should automatically know how to effectively defend themselves fighting in cloth or leather or chain. Should classes get access to all armor types below their top tier? To me, it doesn't make sense. Realism aside, the gameplay impact is pretty massive too. For example, certain classes will get to roll on loot of every armor type, and poor casters are effectively restricted to a tiny proportion of the armor loot. So he has some pretty serious questions about it. Jothany said, while there might be some subtle differences, the actual weight of the armor and thus how much it slows down one has always seemed to be the major, if not the only, real restriction on armor use, like in real life. So if you're strong enough to run and jump and wrestle and plate, having lighter armor shouldn't really interfere with you at all. Nefel said, while it makes sense on paper to have so many different item types, it's also going to be difficult for the team to manage an itemization perspective, in his opinion. I think they may end up streamlining it a bit. This is especially true since each class relies on several different attributes, not only one or two. So depending on how the math works out, you may see things like tanks wearing leather pieces with lower AC just in order to get some higher attribute boosts. It isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it erodes the value of having different armor types and restrictions.
I'm so old school. Like as a tank, for example.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean?
I would never wear leather. Ever. If I played a tank, I'd probably play a warrior. And I would be wearing the heaviest, biggest, craziest looking plate, heavy, stuff I could find.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way if I was a warrior that I would wear a piece of leather that wasn't like a cloak or something. I just couldn't do it.
I hear what you're saying. I think a lot of people probably agree with you on that. Think about it this way, though. When I just remember in the last dev stream, Joppa talked about how different stats are going to be important to one class, right? Like, I can't remember what the example was. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Where like the shaman needs intellect and something else, right? So think about that from a warrior perspective. What if the warrior needs constitution or whatever it is, stamina, and something else to make them the best possible warrior? It's not just AC. So I can see what Nefel's saying, because you might want that one piece that does something very particular. It gives you that one extra stat point. We saw in the dev stream how 1 or 2 stat points can really make a difference, right?
So what I was just thinking about too? I think I just convinced myself out of my own argument, because I was thinking of like an FBSS, for example, in EQ. It's a cloth sash.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like a J boots. Like, and I didn't have to equip them, but if you did, like those are leather boots. So I think I might have just talked myself completely out of my other argument for specialty items, but for basic items, I think I'd still be trying to get, plate and stuff. That's interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting discussion. That's why I wasn't really answering much, because I'm kind of just reading through these with you and hearing them for the first time, but it's a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, for sure. So Thug Stomp said, keep everything the same. Don't let this goes to what we were just saying. Don't let a warrior wear anything lower than plate, so on and so forth for all the classes. Think of the tier you are in as being fixed. So that's kind of an interesting idea. Ixar said, I'd be pretty disappointed if all classes were locked into a specific armor type entirely. I really don't see the reason to limit something like warriors to only plate, other than people who can't stand the idea of some fringe cases that warrior might go after some other armor piece. Really don't want to see highly curated stats on equipment clearly tailored towards specific classes, or just straight up class specific armor being all that common. So sick of that in modern MMOs. In the old days, it didn't matter anyway. We'd all just roll regardless on what dropped or for whom. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's exactly what we were talking about, right? I don't have a problem personally with class specific armor. I kind of like class specific armor, so I don't know. So I think we have a differing opinion about that, but I'll talk about that as well in a second. Big Dog Chris said, I doubt it will be as restrictive as you may think. Yeah, I agree that wizards shouldn't wear plate, but when it says a Dire Lord is heavy chain, I'd be surprised if they couldn't also wear plate or other heavy armors. So he's going like the other way, right? So we're saying that's their top tier. He's saying no, like they'll be able to wear plate too. There'll be some sort of penalty or something, right?
I don't think they're going to be able to wear plate.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. The more I've looked at this, the more I've sort of come around it. It's got to be the top tier sort of idea. Chenzim said, just because a class could wear an item doesn't mean they should or they'd want to. Don't forget the items will have stats, and each class will want a specific set of stats over anything else. Need before greed always worked for me from day one. If a warrior wants a light chain item and so does a ranger, then the ranger, being the target class for that item, would have first call on it. If the ranger doesn't want it and the chain is better for the warrior than an item he's using, then so be it. And then lastly, Counterfletch said, I like having many different armor tiers as long as most classes have at least 2 viable choices. This makes for more reasonable, lore-friendly variety and allows players more flexibility. Forcing characters into a specific armor tier by not even allowing other choices feels heavy-handed and takes away from the living world feeling the MMOs strive for. Using reasonable negative consequences will keep almost all characters in lore-appropriate gear. Forcing it through the interface seems stupid. Like, sorry, warrior, but it's physically impossible for you to put on robes. Good game design is always better than a hard-coded limitation. So, if you see a warrior in robes, probably don't group with that person anyway. Just saying. They probably don't make good choices in general.
Unless it's transmog. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, here we go down the whole road. This is a good reason why maybe we shouldn't have transmog, but we won't go there. So
we'll save the audience from that one.
Yes, I'll save our audience. So I really hope it is the highest tier approach like we've been talking about. If not, I think there's definitely an imbalance in terms of what classes have exclusive use of some armor types, like the Dire Lord and the Ranger. Like, trust me, I'm happy to have zero competition for any light chain armor that drops, because the Ranger's the only one that's listed that can use that. But I don't think it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, hopefully it's just a matter of clarity that's needed to for the class pages to sort of let new players know what the sort of idea is here. There's actually another interesting thing I had, a sort of a realization when I was writing this up and reading these responses. We've seen plenty of armor drops in the dev streams, and it always has that like EQ style of writing on it in terms of which classes can use it. Like, it's got WAR for warrior, PAL for PAL, that kind of thing, right? That goes back to EQ. So why do those even need to be listed if we have a categorization system like this, right? Like, outside of class specific items, it would just be sufficient to list the armor tier, wouldn't it? Like, the OP and a few other people mentioned this creates more work from a design standpoint, but I think it's actually less onerous on them to do it this way, right? If my top tier is light chain and I can use anything below that, and I know that, they don't need to put the class restrictions or the class that can use it on the item. I think you should be expected to know what type of armor your class can use. So when that item drops, whether you should be rolling on it or not. And, you think about itemization in Pantheon, it's going to be a big undertaking, like the way that they're sort of designing. And this might be just a good way of reducing the workload. So just an idea I had, sort of a weird sort of sidetrack, but maybe I'm missing something and I'm not seeing some piece of information that's really important here. But so Minus, with all that said, what do you think about this way that they've sort of recategorized armor types that can be used by each class?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I told you when you reached out to me, like, the first way I read it without thinking twice was this was the highest tier. Like, didn't even stumble off of that. It was just like the immediate thing in my head is, okay, like, I'm a paladin, the highest I can wear is plate. I'm a rogue, I get to wear heavy leather, which, by the way, we didn't even talk about. No more mail for rogues. Fantastic. Love it. Yeah,
you're very happy about that.
Oh my God, I was campaigning for that forever. So heavy leather for rogues, fantastic. But not to turn this around, it's interesting. So, like, the point you just made about, it was funny because I was going to make the point about class restrictions on the gear too. Right? So it's like, okay, well, just because a warrior can wear cloth doesn't mean they can wear every class piece, because it may not be warrior appropriate. And then you kind of brought up this really good argument or different perspective on, like, why are they there then? It's one of those things. Do you know how, like, a lot of people say, like, immersion wise, like, it doesn't make sense, or like, why do it if you have this? It's one of those things that I just kind of accept because it's how it's been.
I know. Right? And that's right. Exactly. When you see it in the streams, you're like, well, that looks like EverQuest. And this game is, spiritual.
EverQuest, WoW. I mean, every game has, like, plate pieces that drop that, like, even in WoW, like, a plate thing can drop. And just because you're a warrior, you might not be able to use it. It might be Paladin exclusive, or it might be, so
that's a good point.
Every single game has that. And D&D has that. There's just things about it that a certain class, it wouldn't fit or work for. Sure. And I'm okay with that. Like, and again, maybe it's because I've just accepted it. And me, I've constantly said, like, we don't always have to reinvent the wheel on everything. And I think it just kind of works, and it helps with itemization. And if there's a really cool effect or stat line on something, like, just not having warrior on it removes the argument. And it's a way to sort of balance the gear. Is it more work? Yes. But I think it also gives them more ability to balance, and more ability. Like, let's say all of a sudden there's this, chain piece that's so good for Rangers, but all the warriors keep getting it because it helps them. And VR's like, we really didn't want it to go this way. We want this to be a ranger item, so we're going to take warrior off of it, and boom, it's nerfed. And I know people hate nerfs, but those types of things, and having that system in place so that you can say, you know what, this isn't working as intended, is, I think, helpful. And think this too, like, think of trinkets and things like that. They need those on there. So if you're going to have trinkets, rings, necklaces, blah, 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 with the class designations, you might as well have it on all the armor. I don't know. That's kind of how I look at it.
You're right. You're right. I mean, it's sort of like a safeguard, right? It's sort of just in case, because you're always going to have those combinations you don't think of ahead of time, right? Some class has some skill that works with something that this item does, and it's way broken, right? So yeah, no, you're totally right.
And we've talked before. I think you've used the term like gamification, or like there's certain things like people. There was a comment that was really good up there, and I hate that I'm going to mess this up, but they said like hard coding it doesn't make sense. I think was the comment. It's still a game and it's still a system, and sometimes hard coding does help because it helps with creation and it helps with rules and balance, and it's not pretty, and it's not like when you think of it like, well, if I was in Terminus, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't, but it's still a game, and there still has to be some pieces of it that allow them to create barriers for the craziness that we could do, right, to stop the 100%. Insanity. So there's just certain things that I think that are done right, and we've said it before. If it's done right and it's works, let's not focus on that needing to be the thing we're changing.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I agree.
Yeah,
well said. Okay, so let's move on. And of course, with the new website, we actually got a couple new members of the community. So introduce themselves over on the forum. So we'll check in with them. First up was Jericho. He said, "Hey gang, Jericho here. I could probably write up a not so short story about my love for EverQuest from the time I jumped in circa summer of 2000, but I'll shelf that for now. Everything I've read regarding Pantheon makes me believe this is the best shot we have at returning to that incredible original EQ experience. So I'm all in and ready to see this through. Really looking forward to lurking around the forums, catching up with some old school MMO gamers. Also, if there are any old guard 7th Hammer folks around from way back in the day, hit me up. Especially if you remember any of the old guilds like Twilight Solace, Eastern Faith, Fortitude, or the Dark Exile. I also joined the unofficial Discord, so feel free to ping me there. Cheers." So that's awesome. And then Thug Stomp, who I actually mentioned earlier in one of the replies, he kept it real short and sweet. He just said, "Played EQ1 for 14 years. Consider me the EQ1 purist when thinking of my take on Pantheon." And somebody actually, it's funny, somebody actually replied, they're like, "You're going to find lots of people around here that are thinking like that too." So, and then they're not wrong.
One comment on the post before, because I really love this. And I'm curious if you think, or anyone listening, if you think this way. Like when I see a post like this, like, oh, the 7th Hammer server, and here's some of the guilds I was in, man, like, what a lasting impression that was made. Like, remembering these guilds and these server names for these games, like, it's just amazing what this genre can do when it's done right. Like, I always hope when I see these posts that somebody is hitting this person up with like a private message, like, "Oh my God, I was in your guild," right? Like reconnecting.
I know. Exactly.
Like I play it out romantically in my head.
I know. Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen. That's one of the reasons I really like it when I get to speak to these things and read these, because I think that there probably is somebody out there listening, or maybe somebody reading that's like, "Oh my God, I knew that guy," right? Like I'm gonna message him. Like that's awesome. So very, very cool. And really, really very cool. So anyway, it's always great to have some new blood, and stop into the forums and say hello if you're so inclined. And before we end the section, I want to give a little plug for a longtime Pantheon supporter and friend of the show, Thorndeep. So Thorndeep started up his own Discord server, and he called it Terminus Tavern. And I don't know about you, but like I'm a sucker for anything tavern themed. Like
I want to live a lot. So yeah,
I like beer a lot. I want to live in a tavern. Like remember that episode of Seinfeld when Kramer makes his apartment like wood grain wallpaper? I'm like, I want that, So if he's doing a Terminus Tavern server, I'm definitely interested, and I'm going to check it out. I have checked it out. I went over and said hi, and he's keeping it small and quaint in terms of like the number of channels, which is really cool. So he's got like the common room, and he's got like a role play channel and like a character introduction channel, which is super awesome. And if there was like a fireplace themed Discord skin, it would just be perfection. So in conjunction with him doing the Terminus Tavern Discord server, he's also going to be streaming on his Twitch channel on Fridays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and doing interviews with community members. So the first one I think is actually tonight when we're recording, and he said he's going to do them on either Thursdays or Fridays, maybe Thursdays instead of Fridays moving forward. We'll have to check back in, but stop by, say hi, and let him know that you're supporting his channel. So Anyway, that's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus. I feel like every week when we get to the Pantheon.Plus section, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read through this quick. That ain't happening today, Theric. We got a lot to talk about.
We do, definitely.
So let's start. We kind of break this down into three pieces. And the first piece is what content has been added to Pantheon.Plus. That's what we're all about. Sharing content, sharing things out there for the community to check out, talk about, and experience or view or listen to. And Nathan Napalm released a video discussing the racial passives, sort of a refresher after he dug back into the new website and the new updated race pages where it's more available for people now. And he kind of discusses the passive abilities and gives his feelings on like what the best races are for the classes. And we did that a while ago too. So like I haven't compared. That's what I need to do. I want to compare his thoughts with ours and maybe we can do a little debate on it. It'd be fun. So
yeah, I'd love to do that. That'd be fun.
Right. So Bazgrim released a new Baz Flash. He just did like a 60-second, here's what's up with the website. So if you're into 60-second segments of news and that's all you want, this one's for you. He also just put out a video on like the funding situation in Pantheon, which has really been a hot topic as of late. He scours through like quotes of the past and some recent updates that were given to kind of paint a picture of how Pantheon is getting money to push to the finish line. So check that out if you're interested in knowing a little more. You have any fears of that? He does a good job of kind of summing that up and painting a clear picture. So for us here, it's been insane. With the release of the website came some very big updates, changes, questions in regard to the classes all across the board. And anyone who knows me, like I could talk about anything. We talk about systems, we could talk about guilds, we talk about community. My passion is in classes. I think you've probably seen that, Theric, and how much
it shows.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's probably like loot and classes, man. That's me when it comes to MMORPGs. So, we really just started breaking these all down, and Theric, you helped with a few of the videos, which was awesome.
I didn't do that much. I gave you a couple little voice clips.
Well, you also helped piece together the script for a couple of them, the Ranger and the Enchanter, so you did help. But we're trying to push through these at breakneck speed because we know that, when one class comes out, everyone's like, well, what about mine? And we don't want to have everybody like have to wait. So yes, the undertaking was, can we get, they're roughly anywhere from, let's say 8 to 10 minutes for the most part. There's a couple that are a little shorter, a couple that are a little longer, depending on the content. They're probably taking me anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to make when it comes to writing the script, researching the changes, making all the images, putting the videos together, blah, 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 blah. And it's been crazy. Yeah. So, if you look at it, by Sunday, if we can get these other 2 class videos out, which I can't promise, Monday will definitely be at least the latest that we should have them all out. But in 7 days, we're going to have 2 rewinds and 12 class videes. I don't know if we've ever done anything like that before.
I'd like to know at which point you were like, man, Pantheon has too many classes. Because I'm sure at some point you got to you're just, just totally exhausted and just like, oh my God, it's never going to end, because the 12 classes is a lot. And, you busted your butt, man, to get those out and to get them out quickly too, right? Because, people are hungry for that kind of information. So good on you, man.
Yeah. And I got to be honest, the community's been awesome at it. Like, I've been getting really good feedback. I've been getting private messages on Reddit and Twitter and Discord and just people saying they really enjoy these things. And
awesome.
It makes it worthwhile. Like when I'm not sleeping and I'm trying to push these out, I haven't had any rhyme or reason to the order I did these in at all. None. Like, I think it's like where my mindset is. The only thing I thought to myself was that I was probably going to do Shaman last because we've just seen so much on Shaman.
Yeah, probably a good choice. Yeah.
So next will be Wizard and then Shaman. So that Wizard wasn't meant to be this late. It just happened, honestly. And I think because the 2 bloated classes were Summoner and Druid, like I did Druid and then I'm like, wow, might as well do Summoner next because it's so long. It's so many abilities. The pets and so I wanted to get those out of the way. Like I'm looking forward to doing the Wizard because it's just more of a standard class. So
the finish line is in sight, my friend. Stay there. You'll get there.
Yeah. So what's being worked on at Pantheon.Plus or with whether it's the website or it's us, just a short little thing. I'm not going to say, articles are being worked on and go into detail. It's It's obvious. It's been said for about months. But the new front page is in the works. And I think it's going to be fairly soon that we're going to see that. It's really going to change how people are going to view the website. We're pretty excited about this because it's going to make navigation a lot easier. It's going to tie directly into being able to launch our article feature. So it's a piece of that. And we have some really exciting news. So I'm doing it again, by the way. This is what happens when Minus has a secret. We have some really exciting news in regards to articles we just can't talk about yet, but it should really excite the community. Some
Gonna be good.
Yeah. Leave it at that. Other news from us. So this one here was a shocker to a lot of people. Not that it was announced, but that it ever happened. I think a lot of people who've listened to the Rewind, this is the worst kept secret in the world. When I announced that I was leaving Rainborn, and again, I love Rainborn. It has nothing to do with Rainborn. It was just there's a lot of community discussion, a lot of internal discussion. But so we've officially announced our guild. We're calling it Plus. And I wanted to take some time to talk about this because I want to clear up some confusion that may come from this whole undertaking and provide some clarity for those that are interested in it. So I really need to be clear here. The first and most important thing to note is the Guild Plus and the Pantheon.Plus community are two completely separate things. Make no mistake that the number one priority for us here at Pantheon.Plus is the overall community. It will always be. That does not mean we won't be active leaders in the guild. It doesn't mean we won't be undertaking, this large scale process if we didn't care about, making a guild and being there and doing something meaningful. But it's really also a huge piece of what we want to help influence the community as a whole. And that's a big part of the guild. So we also understand there's a lot of people who follow us who have their own guilds. They play solo or looking for something different than what we're proposing. The community of Pantheon.Plus will remain unchanged. We're going to look to continue to grow that just because we're doing a guild. I think it's important we state that, Derek.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, definitely I can see why there might be, people might think there's they're one and the same, but it's definitely not. I mean, a guild is a very specific thing and, for a very specific purpose, right? So whereas the Pantheon.Plus is much, much broader, much more, all encompassing sort of thing.
Yeah. So why are we making this guild? So for those that have followed us for a while, probably have heard me say a ton of times that I didn't want to run a guild again. And that's why I had previously joined Rainborn.
I remember hearing you say that many, many times. And I remember reminding you of that many, many times.
Yeah. That said, things are always subject to change. And I guess that saying never say never is a very valid statement right now. So the reason we're making guild is because we have a lot of requests from the team internally, like our Pantheon.Plus teams talked about playing together, right? Like that's a big thing.
Yeah.
As well as sort of the community externally also asking. And this is it's something I've been asked about all the time. And there was a lot of interest, from some of our longer time followers or even new discoverers that wanted to play Pantheon together. And, we're trying to be something different than a standard guild. It's going to take a lot of hard work, not just from the leaders, but like anyone who wants to join, because the Guild Plus will be about providing a positive experience, pun intended, by the way, on whatever server we land on. This means whoever has the plus tag above their head, we're expecting you got to be a positive contributing member to the overall Pantheon community. We want to be able to eventually run events on the server we land on. We want to be able to help players who are seeking help. We want to do our best to combat toxicity where we can. It's not like we're going to go around like the guards in the putting down the evil guilds. But we just want to try to unite people. At the same time, we're not gonna be in a rush to be a world first guild. I just don't want that anymore. I've been that my whole life. I don't want to do that anymore. But we're looking to kind of take the game in, see everything it has to offer. So that means even though we may not be world first, we're gonna see it. We'll get there. So we're gonna push through all the content, but in a way that's enjoyable and to create some lasting memories, not just momentary achievements. And I think that that's a great way to kind of phrase what the whole guild is about. Lasting memories, not momentary achievements.
Yeah, I agree.
So I hope I'm not boring people with this, but I think maybe it paints a picture of not just us, but also what we're looking to do. And I hope it's interesting to you, even if you're making your own guild or thinking about what challenges you may face. So we've had a ton of people apply. Overnight, it was very humbling to see how many people have signed up, submitted their information. It's been a real joy reading through the stories you've shared. And all those people who are interested in Plus. We've received a lot of questions. So here's some quick answers on some of the most frequently asked topics. And again, they could be subject to change. So on loot, and again, remember, even if you're not interested in our guild, these things will probably help you a little bit maybe in thinking about your guild strategies, hopefully. So on loot, if the game features an in-game DKP tracker like they've said, it's silly not to use it if it's good. So even though I'm not a huge DKP fan, if it's in the game, that's probably what we'll use. I would imagine. If it's not, we may still use DKP, or there was a system that we ran in our WoW guild, which we could sort of care fair need distribution, I guess. I'm not going to go into detail on the system right now, but those are probably our two options. We kind of came up with the other one. We made it up, and it's cool. On raiding, we're probably going to be a guild that raids 2 to 3 times a week. The third week is probably for like more special stuff, or if like new content came out or we're really excited about pushing something, we get a chance to do it again, we'll throw that third day on. We're going to be an Eastern Standard guild. It doesn't mean that the time frame means only Eastern Standard people can play, but it just means that we're going to be 9 to 12 Eastern Standard. So that actually should help even attract some Pacific Standard and everybody in between because of the bracket of time we're playing in, which we found that to work really well in our previous guild. So leadership. So to begin with, one of the greatest things about putting a guild together is that it's not just Minus at the top with an iron fist, that I can promise. To add to that, I've had a lot of success in running a WoW guild with Haya and Poiru, who are also going to be on the leadership council, and we've rounded that out currently with Theric and Drac. Again, that can change all the time. The way I've always viewed leadership is like this: no one should have the ultimate decision-making power. Nobody should benefit from the guild individually. That's kind of the way I look at that. It should be done as a team for the betterment of all the members of the guild. Leaders should feel empowered to make decisions that align kind of with our culture that the guild sets forth. Leadership should be able to represent the worries and concerns brought to them to make impactful change. So while I'm maybe designated in the game as guild leader, like with a simple title, more than anything, my whole role as leader is going to be to protect the culture of the guild and then just be a voter in decisions. And that's the way I think it works great. Get people you trust with different opinions, diverse stuff, and go with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's going to be nice to have different, play styles represented, because you and I have different, opinions or different ideas about how, to maybe attack some problem or challenge or whatever like that. And, we'll have that represented, which is nice.
Yeah. And I'm sure anyone out there making guilds, one of the trickiest pieces of the puzzles right now is people are like, well, how big's the guild going to be, right? So first, if a guild's too big, I think you lose the sense of community. And that's something I do not want to do, like straight up. We without a doubt have a limit to the guild size, and we're not looking to be a mega guild. So I'd say our goal is to be like a medium to a low size large guild, probably more towards that medium size guild, in which we can give each member a chance to kind of show their personality, be a part of it, like a meaningful part. The second part of this decision making, however, is like the trickiest. This is like, who do we accept and who don't we, right? Like, we've had amazing applications out there, but great stories, great people, it sounds like. In a perfect world, I just love to just allow everyone who applies and it sounds awesome and aligns with us to join. And we obviously can't do that, it would be too big. As we're going through applications at the moment, just so everyone knows, what we're doing is, people that we really know who have been around the community for a very long time, whether it's on Twitter, the forums, Twitch chat, YouTube.
Guess people who came on Pantheon.Plus you.
Yeah. Just people who have been a part of the community for a very long time across all the different social media, like that we really know. These are the first wave of people we're going to bring in as like straight up members. And then what we're going to do is sort of look at the rest of people that we know a little bit, that we want to get to know a little bit more, and look at bringing them as like initiatives, something like that, to give them a trial to kind of get known a little bit more. But of course, anyone who's like really wants in this guild, the Pantheon.Plus Discord, use it, like talk to people, just be a great member of the community. That's what we're looking for. So just know, guys, like it's the toughest part of this is, like I said, there's going to be people that we're not going to be able to take in. It's not against you. It's just, we have to make decisions, and who knows, like if you don't get picked like now, just like I said, keep being an awesome member of the community, because that's going to get you in. I can guarantee that gets you in. So,
Yep.
So that's tough. That's a tough one. When you're running a community like Pantheon.Plus, then you make a smaller segment of it. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's the biggest difficulty for me.
Yeah, it is. And I think you said it well. It's like we want to get to know people first. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear what you have to say about the game. We want to hear what your attitudes are, and like that's the foundation for what this guild is. And just in terms of how you what kind of attitude do you bring? What kind of community-minded person are you? And we want to, I want to get to know that. I want to get to know these people. So yeah, it is difficult though.
So there's going to be a lot more questions to come, I'm sure. And we're not going to like tie up a ton of like rewind and stuff like that, talking much more about this, because one of the reasons I'm going so in depth on right now is, again, for two reasons. One, it's a big announcement for us. Number two, I think that there's value to people out there who want to create their own guilds to kind of like think through some of these things, and doing it live on the rewind is like just kind of showing you into my world. Now I'm thinking through these things live almost. And I think it just can maybe paint a picture that hopefully someday helps others like create their guilds or their communities. And that's kind of why I share this. It's not really, it may sound like we're trying to promote the guild. That's really not what we're trying to do. We're trying to just provide some clarity on like why we're doing it and
to promote the idea of the guild, right? And
Yeah.
because we've talked about this before, like, how essential guilds are to Pantheon in general.
Yep. And that's it for a much longer than normal update on Pantheon.Plus. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued.
Okay, so I'm going to help you out here and give your voice a break because you've been talking for a while. I'm going to read some of our questions here. And if you want to read a couple too or whatever, we'll just sort of jump back and forth. But is that all right? Yeah,
you can read them all. It's all you. I'll answer.
Okay, cool. Okay, so our first question in the mailbox this week comes from our buddy JJ Piedra and some from Snuffy as well, because they had sort of similar questions. So I sort of combined them into one question. And it talks what we were just talking about. It said guilds are going to be an essential part of Pantheon, and it will be the easiest avenue to find players and group content and progress through the game. It was mentioned before that there's going to be perks for joining a guild, but I don't believe they were ever detailed. What are some guild perks you'd like to see in Pantheon? And what about things like guild quests? Do you think that's something that will be be in Pantheon? So pretty cool question. In terms of perks, I think we've talked about incentivizing people to do things that fit Pantheon's design, like these like grouping bonuses, XP bonuses for grouping, that kind of thing. But I don't want to be the buzzkill here, but I would say the perks of joining a guild are just what JJ said, like it's easier to find groups and progress through the game. That's the reward of being in a guild. And I think I don't really consider like guild icons or banners to be perks. Like I'm sure that will be there, but that's not really a perk. That's just sort of like a flavor thing. And I'm not talking about that. So, anything that makes someone want to join for reasons outside of the purpose of what a guild is, and that is to, to do things as a group, do things in an organized way, and sort of go through the content. I'm not really into that kind of stuff. But what do you think, Miles?
So I brought this up a long time ago, and I don't have many people that agree with me here, but I'm still standing by it. I would love to see. So what's the world, social media, the whole world's biggest problem right now is not facing, confronting issues and working through problems, right? Like I think that's a really lost thing right now.
I would agree with that.
So I would like to see something in the guild system that encourages people to fight to stay in a guild and work out problems instead of just being able to ghost and run to another guild. And I think that some kind of cool tenure system where you actually get tangible benefits to your character by building tenure within a guild that would go away if you left would be really cool. And it kind of gives you that extra reason to work through your problems. And I think that would help guild leaders a lot. And I just think that, guild leaders are a breed of people, and guild officers and council members, like it's a breed of people. It's a working thing to do within a game, within a hobby, you're working. And I just would love to see a game help them out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. We've mentioned that before. That tenure idea is a really good one, I think. And I think that has a lot of potential. So,
the thing is, when you think of something like that, is people look at the ultimate negative. Well, if I'm in a guild and the leader's a jerk and kicks me out, I lose my tenure. Okay, that would suck. But it's not a reason not to do it, right? Like it's something to maybe they have to figure out a way to, you could put a ticket in and you could maybe, I don't know what you do with that. I don't have all the answers. It would have to be worked out, but it's not a reason to just throw it out.
Well, like there's always going to be negatives, but sometimes the positives outweigh those negatives, right? Like look at it from a balance perspective. And you're right. People, we have a bad habit of just sort of avoiding and burying our heads in the sand, or just, running away, like, just abandoning a problem instead of dealing with it. And I think that gets a lot of people into trouble, like you said. So there's a lot of potential good there. Next question. Chobin said, do you think world-affecting spells like the Druid's Vine-Woven Bridge will be so niche that they'll be forgotten about, even in the instances where they could be used? Or do you think it might swing the other way, where unjumpable gaps are common enough, so it's common, or so common that it's even required for a Druid to have this? So I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I think these spells that are being purposefully made, specifically like climbing stuff, the rope, ladders, rafts. I think the game's being designed that they're going to be needed, used, advantageous to have. I think we'll probably use them a bit more than some of the MMOs we see that add these cool flavor abilities that you never use. I feel like Pantheon's being designed to take advantage of them.
I agree. Yeah, no, that's basically what I was going to say too. And they add so much class identity, right? Because not every class has these traversal sort of abilities. So I think that there's a real focus, a real tie-in with the core tenets of the game, and I hope there are a lot of places where you might need a bridge or a boat or a rope. At the very least, it adds that extra layer of alternate traversal with some benefits in the world. So yeah, I'm definitely not thinking they're going to be so niche that they're forgotten about either. So okay, so next question. John Wayne said, with some of the rewording and or changing of abilities and the descriptions on the website, do you feel the synergies of abilities? How do you feel about them? How do you feel that they've changed, or do you feel like there's anything going on there? This question really made me think of, there's always been one class synergy that really intrigued me. And minus, you brought this up in your, can't remember if it was the Enchanter video
Summoner.
or the Summoner video. Yeah. So we're talking about the Summon Behemoth ability the Summoner has, which is one of the coolest synergies with another class, because the Summoner has this spell called Summon Behemoth, where basically you have to have an Enchanter in your group, or at least in your proximity, to immediately dire charm the Behemoth, or else you're going to get completely squished, right? Like, it's just going to run your group over and take over. And I love that idea. I love that, there's these sort of limited use skill synergies. And I really hope that they lean into that a little bit. Now, I think in your video, you mentioned that that the Summon Behemoth is no longer listed. So, maybe just something we'll see down the road. Maybe, like you said, one of the mastery upgrades. But really hope they are not sort of getting too far away from that. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. When I first saw that ability and that setup, I loved it. And then I thought to myself, like, is this really worthwhile for like the couple things? Like, this was funny, or this is cool. I mean, yes, I guess. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum is like, so what have we seen with that? Like, that very bold, we need a Summoner and Enchanter together. That's one. The only other one is a Warrior and a Warrior. Those are the only super bold synergies that are out there. And they're fun and they're cool. Specifically, I think Warriors is the coolest, actually. But here's the thing. Synergy is actually bigger now than it's ever been. And it's not with these big and bold statements of like two warriors put their shields together, or a summoner summons a behemoth and the enchanter does it. Like, these very defined things. The synergy is actually stronger now because states have been developed. And
that's a really good point.
Yeah. And so the fact that if you read through these abilities now, and I know you can't look back at the old site unless you have images, but in my videos, you'll see that there's a lot of times where abilities have now a state added. And certain abilities that we know of, especially with the mastery system, will increase in ability or do something special when an enemy is within X state. So, for example, a summoner you brought up, while they have that ability that was previously like with an enchanter, all of their pets now, except for their healing pets, so their earth pet, their fire pet, their wind pet, actually benefit by putting enemies into states. So now you're like, okay, well, do I want to use my wind pet for damage, or do I want to use my fire pet for damage? And now, instead of just deciding which one you like better, you can think about your group. So like, if I use my, fire pet, it puts it into a burning state. Well, who's that going to help? These state things are sort of underneath and not as obvious as the Enchanter or Warrior stuff or the Summoner thing like we were talking about, but are probably going to create a massive amount of synergy that really makes more strategic decision making at the forefront, which Pantheon's sort of always been about.
Great answer. It's exactly what John Wayne, I think, was asking there. And I think you nailed it there. So that's great. Next question comes from our buddy Tech Ninja. He said, what is your best or worst, oh crap, I just disconnected story? So let's see. Did I go first? I'll tell mine real quick. I've told this story before in a couple places, and I'll just sort of recap it. Mine's the 48-hour Ranger epic weapon camp of Veneral Sather in Karnor's Castle in EverQuest. So I sat there with my buddies, and for the 48 hours. When he finally spawned, Guild came, helped me out, took him down. I kneeled down to loot the orb that he dropped, which I needed. Disconnected. As soon as I kneeled down and they opened the inventory of his inventory open, I saw the orb. Disconnected. Had a heart attack. Got logged back in. Checked my inventory and it was there. But man, I had a moment. So, what's yours?
Well, at least yours ended happy because mine sure as hell didn't. EverQuest as well. Southern Desert of Row. First, still have no J boots at this point, and decide to do the clearing method to try to get the AC to spawn, rather than go to the Ocean of Tears. So I was just in South Row killing everything on my wizard, killing everything, every spider, every scarab, everything in that, everything, right?
Yep.
In the bottom part, like the sand part before you get to the grass, that's what you killed. And I'd never seen him spawn. I was there all the time. I never seen him spawn. And in the very far corner of the sand, in the canyon area, he spawns. And I'm shaking. Like, I'm young. I'm shaking. My hands are shaking on the keyboard. I'm like kiting him, right? Because I'm a wizard. And I'm like nervous. And I'm like, oh God, don't let him get close to me and like mess this up. And I kite him in the corner and I run him in a circle and I kill him. And I see him fall and I'm like, yes. And I start running. Link dead. I log back in. No. 2 people I didn't even see anywhere nearby are looting the ring. And I'm just like,
oh my God. That's the worst.
I'm pretty sure tears were in my eyes. I mean, I was in high school, like early high school, but tears were definitely in my eyes.
Yeah, that's the worst. Well, man, I thank God the internet's in a better state these days than it was back then, because I don't think I could handle that anymore. And last question is a kind of a fun one. It comes from Gulo. He says, what real life fears could Pantheon use to scare you in games? So like heights, snakes, spiders, darkness. Minus what are you afraid of, man? What's going to freak you out in games? Heights for you. Eh?
Yeah, I did. Like anytime you make me walk over a small plank over a long gap and I can see down, I literally start to sweat and I don't breathe.
You get that vertigo feeling.
Yeah, like in Hellblade we just played recently, there's like a scene where you're walking and you like start to like kind of, I'm actually getting nervous saying this. You kind of like start to stumble left and right as you're walking across it. And I just got chills down my spine. I'm not even kidding you thinking about it. Yeah, definitely heights. And it's weird because like I'm afraid of heights, but it's not a massive thing. But in games, for some reason, it bothers me.
That's really interesting. For me, I'm kind of claustrophobic in real life. Like I do not like tight spaces. So, I definitely think in a game, and I've had this happen, sort of trying to think of an instance. I know it's happened. I just can't think of a specific time, but you get into like a really narrow tunnel and that one that gets smaller and smaller sort of as you progress through it. It makes me think of like Lower Guck a little bit. There were some really tight spaces in there and some rooms that didn't have a lot of room to move around, I really don't like that feeling in real life, and I don't like it in games. I can deal with it, but man, I'm a ranger, dude. I need wide open spaces. I need to feel the wind and like have the freedom to move around. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, another great show, Theric, and thank you for all the help this week putting this one together because I was tied up quite a bit. So
no problem. It was well worth it. Your work was well received.
Well, thank you, sir. And thank you to everyone who stopped by to listen today and downloaded on Spotify or however you choose to listen to the Rewind. Without you guys, we wouldn't be doing this. So thank you to everyone who submits questions and participates. It's awesome. And until next week.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.